The key to getting rich in crypto can be summed up in just 4 letters: DYOR. Doing your own research can be, and often is, the difference between making your smartest investing decisions or throwing money down the toilet. Only by researching cryptocurrencies can you truly understand what they are, how they work, and their future potential, if any. That's why today we're giving you the 7-step process we use to research cryptocurrencies here at the Coin Bureau. So stay till the end and you'll have everything you need to research crypto like a pro. Alright, before you take your first step towards mastering the art of DYOR, it helps to understand what you're up against. So let's open CoinMarketCap, check how many cryptocurrencies exist, and oh dear lord. Yep, there's over 50 million crypto coins and tokens out there, with most of them being completely worthless. Now, obviously, nobody has time to go through all of them, not even with a team of full-time crypto researchers like we have. So instead, you need to narrow the field, which is why step 1 is starting with narratives. Now, these narratives could include anything from AI, privacy, DePIN, RWAs, payments, DeFi, or whatever else. The goal is to identify which narrative is leading right now, then identify where capital will likely rotate next. To do this, you need to understand that crypto narratives follow a 4-stage life cycle. Stage 1 is inception, usually triggered by a technological breakthrough or macro event. This is when only deep dive researchers and the teams building the project themselves are paying attention. It's the perfect entry point because prices are still subdued, for now. Stage 2 is excitement, where things start to heat up. People begin to notice what's happening and VC firms start taking early positions. Stage 3 is social proof, where FOMO starts to take over. Social media is filled with influencers talking about projects within that narrative, and prices start to go parabolic. And stage 4 is peak euphoria. This is where media outlets write about crypto bros becoming overnight millionaires, and crypto Twitter is flooded with rocket emojis and LFG on almost every post. And you can learn more about spotting the next crypto narrative in the video over here. Anyway, spotting a narrative that's already taking off is easy. Just track what's trending on X or which cryptos have already gone vertical. But by that point, you're already too late. So, how do you figure out where capital rotates next? By looking at the data. A good place to start is developer activity. If you see a particular narrative getting a surge in GitHub commits, this can be a reliable signal that big things are coming. Another thing to do is follow the money by tracking capital flows. And a good way to do this is by checking total value locked, or TVL, on sites like DeFi Llama. Pro tip, go to the Chains tab, look at the 7-day TVL change, and spot any chains seeing outsized inflows. But arguably, the most powerful signal is social volume, basically how many mentions a project or narrative is getting on social media. This can be hard to track manually since your algorithm tends to show you things you've already engaged with. Thankfully though, sites like Santiment and LunaCrush give you a much clearer view. Okay, so once you've found the right narrative, step 2 is to filter out a few promising cryptos within that narrative that could outperform. Luckily, that's easy to do using tracking sites like CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, which group cryptocurrencies by narrative. The good news here is that spotting the cryptos with the most potential is actually easier than you might think. You just need to be on the lookout for 3 things. The first of these is a relatively low market cap. That's because a crypto's market cap is a big factor in determining how much it can pump, not the crypto's actual price tag. A lower market cap typically means less liquidity. That means you have to be sensible when sizing your buys. You shouldn't be buying a ton. But it also means it takes less buy pressure from the market for that crypto to 2x, 5x, 10x, and so on. So, ideally, you want a few projects with large caps, market caps over $1 billion, a few mid caps, $100 million to $1 billion, and a few small caps, anything below $100 million. Incidentally, the second thing to look out for is a low price tag. While market cap is what actually determines potential, a surprising number of investors, especially inexperienced retail, think a low price means a crypto is cheap. They see a sticker price with loads of zeros and assume they'll be rich when that token reaches $1. Newsflash, that almost never happens. And the third thing to look out for is accessibility. Basically, your crypto should be easy to buy on numerous exchanges and ideally should be available to US investors. Obviously, it won't pump if people can't buy it. Now, if you find a project that ticks all three boxes, you might be onto a winner. However, the market moves fast and you always need to be on the lookout to keep up. And if that sounds daunting or you don't have time to spend 16 hours a day at a computer, then you can make it much easier by joining the Coin Bureau Club, where we're dedicated to finding great market opportunities, not just in crypto, but in TradFi too. And right here on YouTube, you can now access the new Coin Bureau Club Lite plan. For just $10 a month, you'll get daily market updates across both crypto and TradFi, giving you our team's insights on the best market opportunities and our curated updates with just the bits that matter. To get started, just tap the join button below this video, and I'll see you there. All right, so you've selected a few cryptos from your narrative. But here's the kicker. These days, a narrative alone will only take a crypto project so far. Quite often, a particular narrative only gets a brief moment in the spotlight because one of its cryptos saw a quick pump. This is why step 3 is checking a few adoption metrics to see whether your crypto actually has growth potential. You basically want to see if your crypto has a pulse or if it's dead in the water. To keep things simple, you can split this step into 3 layers. The first layer is checking how much direct usage your crypto is actually seeing. The easiest way to do this is with a block explorer. Now, if it's a token, you can use the underlying blockchain's explorer. For example, Etherscan lets you check any project built on Ethereum. If it's a layer 1 crypto, though, it can be harder to find the data you need. And make no mistake, if there's no transparent way to access the necessary data, that's a major red flag. So, assuming you've found the right block explorer, though, there are a few things to check. The first is active accounts or wallet addresses and the number of new addresses being created. And while you're here, you can also check how many transactions are happening on that protocol from day to day. You also want to see how many holders the project has. Ideally, you want lots of holders without a handful of wallets controlling a big chunk of the supply. Those large holders are whales who could dump their bags at any time, crashing the price in the process. Just keep in mind, though, that the metrics we've just mentioned are often inflated with bots, so do take them with a grain of salt. That's why the second layer to this step is checking the project's economic usage, which you can do on sites like DeFi Llama or Token Terminal. Key things to look at here are fees, revenue, trading volume, and TVL. And that brings us to the third layer of this step, which is checking off-chain metrics to gauge how many users there really are. Look at how many times the project's browser extension wallet has been downloaded, if one exists. If the project has a mobile app, check how many downloads it has too. With all those metrics covered, you should have a good idea of whether your crypto has a strong pulse, is suffering from poor or declining health, or has already flatlined. Okay, assuming everything checks out, you're ready for step 4, digging into the founders and team behind the project in question. Usually, this information can be found on the project's website. And it goes without saying that if the project's team and founders aren't publicly known, this is a massive red flag. Now, the best place to start here is with interviews with the project's founders. Believe it or not, but this can be the single most useful bit of information in your research, simply because founders often outline things that don't seem to be explained elsewhere. Founders also do a great job of explaining their project in plain English, but not always. If the founder can't explain the project clearly, or you leave with more questions than answers, then consider that a red flag too. Quite often, you can find interviews with the project's founders on YouTube. More often than not, the project will have its own dedicated channel, but occasionally there are unofficial channels dedicated entirely to that crypto project. Whatever the case, though, you want to build a shortlist of interviews worth watching and sort them from oldest to newest. Then work through them in order until you have a clear understanding of what the project is actually trying to achieve. As you go, take notes on why the project was started and how it works. You also want to note down any details of funding rounds, including who invested in them, when, and at what stage. And be sure to note down any past milestones and what's still on the roadmap. Bonus points if the founders or team openly discuss weaknesses or limitations. Teams that acknowledge problems and explain how they plan to solve them tend to be far more credible than those claiming that everything's just fine and dandy. And pro tip, you can go a step further by checking sites like Crunchbase to understand who's actually behind the project. Many projects are backed by a software company and/or a non-profit foundation. Crunchbase often lists these along with funding rounds and even hidden founders. Now, assuming the founders didn't say anything that made you want to run for the hills, you're now ready for step 5, digging into the project's tokenomics. You'd be surprised how many people skip this step entirely, which is crazy given that a promising crypto project can easily fail with piss-poor tokenomics. Definitely not something you want to be blindsided by later. The first thing to check is whether your crypto is a coin or a token. A coin runs on its own native blockchain, while tokens are built on top of an existing one. Coins are used to pay fees, transfer value, and reward miners or validators for securing the network. But most cryptos are actually tokens, usually with specific use cases tied to the project in question. The second tokenomic metric to check is the token's supply. The larger the total supply, the lower the price value of each individual token, and vice versa. You also want to pay close attention to how much of the supply is in circulation. The higher the percentage in circulation, the better. That's because there will be less supply hitting the market later, which can lower the value of each token already in circulation. If there's a low circulating supply, this can mean there's still lots of tokens locked away or yet to be mined or minted. This is why the third thing you should check is the fully diluted valuation, or FDV. Put simply, the FDV is the theoretical market cap if every token was in circulation. This can be a great indicator of whether a crypto project is undervalued or overvalued. Anyway, the fourth and fifth tokenomic metrics to take note of are token allocation and distribution. Allocation refers to how the total supply is split between groups like the team, early investors, and other stakeholders before launch. You can usually find this on sites like ICO Drops, ICO Analytics, or CryptoRank. Meanwhile, token distribution is how the current circulating supply is spread across wallets. The good news is you should already have this from when you checked the current holders. Token distribution can usually be found directly on the crypto's block explorer. And this relates to the sixth thing to check, the project's vesting schedule. Early tokens allocated to the team and early backers are locked up to boost confidence among regular investors. Vesting schedules show how these tokens will be unlocked over the coming months and years. Ideally, you want vesting schedules that rise gradually, since that reduces the risk of a supply shock when tokens enter circulation. Pay close attention to any cliff schedules where large amounts of tokens unlock at once, as this supply can suddenly flood the market and drive price down. The seventh thing to check is the token's inflation rate. Now, inflation isn't always a bad thing. It's often used to incentivize miners and validators, but it needs balance. Too much inflation erodes the value of the existing supply. And of course, some projects are also deflationary, which has the opposite effect. It's also worth noting that cryptos with a capped supply can sometimes become deflationary, especially if tokens are burned or permanently lost. Now, the eighth thing to check is your crypto's staking metrics, if indeed it can be staked. You want to see a yield that's attractive enough to encourage people to buy and lock up their tokens. You should also note any lockup periods and how long it takes to unstake. And finally, the ninth thing to check is utility. This is anything that drives demand for the coin or token. This can include staking, governance, store of value, payments, or anything else. If it brings people in, write it down. By this point, you should know whether your chosen crypto has potential and have a solid grasp of how it works. You're now ready for step 6, comparing it with other projects in the same narrative. The goal here is simple: identify which projects are doing the same thing and why your project should come out on top. To do this properly, you need more than a surface-level understanding of the project. You need to know what makes it tick and why its core mechanics are more compelling than its competitors. That means heading to the project's website, rolling up your sleeves, and getting into the nitty-gritty. The homepage will usually explain what it's about in a way that should be easy for the average reader to follow. That said, it'll usually offer a simple surface-level overview, which often limits how useful it really is. That's why you need to click through every single link on the website, starting with the most boring parts first: the terms and conditions and the privacy policy. These are usually ignored, but they often reveal who's behind the project and where it's based. If those entities have their own websites, you should dig into those as well. Then go through the project's blog posts, along with the blogs of any related entities behind it. This can often reveal upcoming milestones and may also bring other promising projects onto your radar. Next, you need to go through the project's documentation. This can feel overwhelming at first, but the opening page often summarizes the whole thing in plain English. Most documentation also includes an FAQ section or a glossary that explains any niche concepts. Many also have a search function, which makes it much easier to find answers to specific questions. For example, you can search for key terms like minting, staking, validator, inflation, or anything else you're unsure about. Once you've done that, you should have a deep understanding of your chosen crypto project. You should clearly understand what it offers and the problem it's trying to solve, with a clearly defined role. If a project has too many focus points, then it risks spreading itself too thin and may not succeed in any of them. The question now is whether it's the best project to dominate that particular narrative. And that means putting it side by side with the biggest projects in that space, usually the ones with the biggest market caps. You don't need a deep dive into them, just understand what they offer and why they've dominated mindshare so far. You then need to be honest with yourself about whether your chosen project actually offers something better. If it does, you can use the competitor's performance as a benchmark for how well your project might do. But if it doesn't, it will probably struggle to stand out and likely won't perform as well as you'd hope. Alright, so by this point, you've done the work. You've read the documentation, stress tested the tokenomics, dug into the team, and you're feeling fairly confident. The seventh and final step is the uncomfortable one. You now need to try and break your own thesis. It's the step most retail investors skip, but also the one that separates the people who make it from the people who don't. To do this, you need to step back and think about what could go wrong. That means asking tough questions like, what happens if users leave? Every protocol looks great when it has momentum, but what's actually keeping users there? Is it deep liquidity or network effects that build over time? Or is it just retail capital chasing incentives that vanish when the next shiny thing appears? Then ask yourself what happens when the next major token unlock hits. What price did early investors get in at? And are the people who bought in much cheaper likely to stick around for long-term gains, or are they more likely to sell? Also consider what percentage of tokens is currently circulating and how that balance would shift if a large portion suddenly got sold. And what happens if a better version of your project comes along? Is its moat a technical edge or a strong community? And if it is the community, is that loyalty durable or likely to fade over time? Are there any competing projects in development that could threaten it once they launch? You also need to look at regulation. Does the protocol depend on regulatory ambiguity in order to work? Is the team based in a jurisdiction that makes enforcement easier? Have regulators like the SEC made any comments on this particular narrative? And if the token were classified as a security tomorrow, what would happen to exchange listings, liquidity, and institutional interest? And of course, can this project survive a bear market? When Bitcoin drops, say, 20%, altcoins can fall 40% or more. If that happens, where does that leave you? Does your thesis only work in market uptrends, or does the project actually have long-term durability? Now, after you've tried every angle to break your thesis, ask yourself one last thing. If I found out everything I just worried about was true, would I still want to own this crypto? If the answer is yes, you've found your conviction. But if you feel hesitant, that hesitation is valuable information, so use it. And once you've answered those questions, you'll have everything you need to make a decision. As the saying goes, knowledge is power. The more you understand your project, the better your chances of success. That said, though, a crypto project doesn't need to be perfect to do well. As long as the positives clearly outweigh the negatives, you may have found the kind of project that can take your portfolio to the moon. Good luck. And, well, folks, that's about all for today. You've now mastered the art of DYOR. If you learned something new, then be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're looking to build a winning portfolio, then check out the video right here. And if you want to learn how to trade cryptocurrencies, then check out the video over here. Okay, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. This is Guy, signing off.